former Republican presidential candidate and former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. Governor Huckabee, good to see you.
Good morning, Maria.
So, question for you. Would you consider a place in Trump's administration?
Well, why not? I'll just do what everybody else does. There's no chance that'll ever happen. But look, the vice presidency is the job nobody wants, but nobody ever turns down. So, you know, we remember back Lyndon Johnson, John Kennedy couldn't stand each other, ended up being a ticket. Ronald Reagan picked George H.W. Bush to be his running mate, even after a very bitter primary. It is a common thing that you end up having people that are a real odd couple, and I wouldn't necessarily put anything behind you at this point.
But wouldn't that be extraordinary, Andy? I mean, after the way that Donald Trump spoke about Marco Rubio, to say he does have a place in my administration.
Right. It's pretty amazing. But we had voodoo economics, right, from Bush to Reagan. So, I mean, there's history with that. But, Mike, what I was interested in is the only way that I see right now with the polls for the Republicans to win is to have a Trump or Rubio and Trump Cruz ticket. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. I don't know if Kasich will run with Trump. I don't know, but that's the only way I can see, because the polls are like 10%, whether it's Hillary or whether it's Bernie Sanders right now against Trump. It's really large. They need to bring more of the Republicans together to get this to happen.
Well, I understand what you're saying. I think it's less likely to see Trump and Cruz than it would be maybe Trump and Kasich. And I understand everything John Kasich's saying. I think he could pass a lie detector test in saying it. But that's because nobody's offered him the job. He's running for president. He's not running for something else. And by the way, if he were to say, yeah, you know, I'd probably take that, then all of his support for the presidency drops off. So he's doing exactly what he has to do. The reason that would make more sense is because both with Cruz and with Rubio, you have first-term senators, no executive experience, who really sort of fit more of a mold of a Barack Obama than they do of somebody who has seasoned executive experience. In the point of Kasich, you've got congressional experience, a very effective governor. Makes a lot of sense. He brings his delegates, and Donald Trump's the nominee.
Dagan?
Governor Huckabee, what is the likelihood that I mean, if Trump insulted one of these guys, do you think that they would still stand up and say, sure, I'll be your running mate? I know he hasn't insulted that many people, but certainly his opponents, you know, he's taken some pretty tough shots at them.
Sure he has, but it's politics, it's an election, and, you know, this is a rough game. If you can't stand the sight of your own blood, don't run for anything, because you're going to see plenty of it.
Wow.
Good God, Governor.
Nice, Governor.
So what about this, Governor? Ted Cruz already looking ahead to California. 172 delegates up for grabs in California. Now, Cruz is saying, so he's not in New York, everybody else is in New York, but Cruz is saying that California will decide the GOP nomination for the first time in half a century. Listen to what he said right now, yesterday.
I'm going to say a sentence that has not been said in 50 years. California is going to decide the Republican nomination for president.
Who do you think takes California, Governor?
Well, at this point, Trump seems to be leading the polls. Now, a lot of it is going to have to do with the organization. I think a smart move on Trump's part was bringing in Paul Manafort, a seasoned operative who understands the sort of the hand-to-hand combat at the state level, the delegate selection process. Brilliant move. And I think that's going to put Trump in a very different place. But, you know, this is going to come down to momentum. Trump's going to come out of New York with a strong locomotive-like momentum. Well, I think he'll take all the delegates.
If he does, Cruz shows the math doesn't work for Cruz.
But I want to ask the governor about that. 1230, the mark of delegates. Donald Trump is the only one of these candidates who has any chance of hitting it. And you have Cruz out in California, Governor. But what about New York, Pennsylvania, and Maryland, where Donald Trump is still handily in the lead? I mean, will those states decide it?
Well, they very well could, especially if Trump sweeps them all and then picks up other delegates. One of the things that Cruz has kind of boxed himself into a corner with is his constant saying that Kasich needs to get out because it's mathematically impossible for him to win. Well, under that same scenario, if Trump gets to a place where there is no way, even if Cruz got 100% of the delegates, he can win, then he needs to follow his own advice. Now, will he? Of course he won't. But then he shows that he was disingenuous in calling for Kasich to get out when it was mathematically impossible for Kasich to win.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because Trump is blasting what he's calling the rigged rules on picking the Republican delegates. Here is Fox News contributor Georgette Mosbacher yesterday on this program. She explained the situation because she's a delegate.
I've been a delegate to 4 conventions. And no, it is rigged. All right. However, it is the way it has been. There are rules.
Governor, do you think the system needs to be changed?
Well, it certainly needs to either be changed or better explained. I've been a delegate to a number of conventions as well. And one thing, though, that has typically happened is the delegates pretty much stayed true to the way the votes went in their state. What you have with Colorado is a state that didn't even vote. And then you have other states, and this happened to me in 2008, where, like in Louisiana, I won the state's election, but the party gave the delegates to John McCain. Same thing happened. Donald Trump won the state. They gave the delegates to Cruz. Look, they may be playing by the rules, but there's something to remember. It's one thing to do something that's legal. It's another thing to do something that is right.
Yeah.
So what the party operatives and insiders are doing may be legal within the rules, but most fair-minded Americans say, that just ain't right.
Yeah.
Well, and you just laid out that this has happened before. Why hasn't it been changed, Governor? Why hasn't there been more outrage from people who look at Colorado and say, I can't believe that that's the way it went down?
Because it's the party who nominates their person, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been as blatant. I don't think it's ever had as much animosity directed toward one candidate. In most cases, it was simply a matter of this guy's leading, so let's give it to him. In this case, this guy's leading, so let's take it away from him. And that is a big difference. It's one thing to say, let's give the delegates to the person who is more likely to win because he has the most delegates. But when you say, let's take them away from the guy who has the most delegates because he might win, and that scares us.
Yeah.
That's a whole different thing, and that is very divisive to the party.
It sure is. Governor, good to hear you. Thanks so much for your insights on this. We'll see you soon.
Thanks a bunch.
Governor Mike Huckabee there.